Alright, guys, welcome to another episode in the series of Ancient History of Bharat. Okay, like I said, there is so much to learn about our country, and one lifetime is not enough. Because every other state, every other thing, there are too many variations. And from the very last chapter in this book, that is chapter number 26, what I have discovered is it's not a very big deal, but it explains why we have too many surnames in our country. Okay, this practice of carrying a surname, and that surname signifies something. Okay, and it's a very sensitive issue for a lot of people in our country. Okay, and a lot of our politics in our country is based on the surname that we carry, because usually we have a collective representation as a community in the politics or in the parliament or in any local state legislatures. Very recently, if you see what happened in the state of Uttar Pradesh for the majority partner in the NDA government, that is BJP, how do you explain their defeat in Uttar Pradesh state elections? Not defeat, but they had to concede a lot of seats to the SP, that is the Majumdar party, and yes, so that is that is one of the examples of caste politics at play in our country. Okay, all right, chalo. So we will discuss chapter number 27, actually, not 26. 26 we have finished. Okay, the name of chapter number 27 is Social and Economic Conditions. Okay, so first of all, social and economic conditions are just to define them for a layperson, somebody who is watching this episode as the first video in this series of Ancient History of Bharat. So let me explain to them. Social and economic conditions are basically how people survived in a society. What were their means of subsistence? What were the activities that they did to earn those subsistence? Okay, economic conditions, what were the strata in the society, who were the ones who were economically and financially well off, and who else were the people who were not financially well off. Okay, and the people who were not financially well off, what did they do? Okay, these are the questions that I think will be answered in this book, in this chapter. All right, so this chapter starts from page number 512, the family life. Okay, the family life was the framework on which society rested, and the Griya Sutras that deal with the domestic sacrifices and other duties performed by the householders supply valuable information regarding it. Okay, and many other people, many other political leaders, and many other social media influencers have also spoken about this. How family as an institution, why is it declining? Okay, we don't see extended or joint families too much these days, especially in the countries of the West, and now that in our country, in Bharat as well, largely in the urban areas. If you still travel to rural areas, you will see uh, there are joint and extended families existing. Okay, but yes, during the Upanishads, during the age of the Upanishads, when they were written down, family life was the ultimate goal. Not exactly the ultimate goal, but yes, it is something that had to be achieved. Okay, you cannot let go of this phase of your life, that you're supposed to live the life of a family man, and that was the center of the society. Okay, now the family life was a framework on which society rested. So society functioned on a family life. Okay, there is very interesting sacrifice, Vaishwadeva Bali. Okay, the directions about the Vaishwadeva Bali, one of the daily domestic sacrifice, that it need not be repeated every time food was cooked, and that it may be offered from the kitchen of the chief householder or from that of the member whose food was ready first, show that the joint family was big enough to necessitate cooking at different kitchens. The fact that a right is prescribed for one desirous of a large family shows people like to have many children. Okay, this is also something that you might have observed. Okay, we don't see a lot of this in the urban areas, and now more so in the this current generation that we are going through. even in the rural areas, up to a certain extent, people have stopped having large families. If you have some elders in your house, okay, your grandfathers, grandmothers, ask them, okay, even their brothers and sisters, like, ask the eldest members of your family clan, okay, and they will tell you, okay, in their days, okay, a lady was expected to birth at least 4 or 5 children, and that was the bare minimum, okay. So here, R.C. Majumdar in this chapter, he writes that an extended family was the way to move forward, okay. uh, Prescribed for one desire shows that people like to have many children, okay. This was the preference. People preferred that they have extended families. The high sense of responsibility and duty expected to be shown by the head of the family towards the other members is seen in the Griya Sutra rule that he was to take his food only after feeding all the children and old persons, as well as any female residing under his protection and any pregnant lady in the house. Okay, so even so, up to the Griya Sutras, they go up to the extent of exhorting the male, the senior most male member of the family to make sure that everyone else has eaten, and then towards the end, he was supposed to take his food. Okay, now I don't know if you guys have heard this or not, but when I was in school, this was one of the examples that was frequently quoted by many of the teachers, especially the female teachers, when they were trying to make this point that our society is patriarchal and trying to give it a negative tinge or a negative shade. That in a household, only the men are supposed to eat first, and the women only eat after the men have eaten, and sometimes they also have to eat the leftovers, okay. But here in the Griya Sutras, in the Upanishads, it says that men were supposed to eat at the last, okay. Now I'm not disputing the first claim, whatever my teachers told me or used it as a justification for their argument that patriarchal society is necessarily bad. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying is, which one do you believe? Which one are we supposed to believe? Okay. So if the Upanishads say this, then I'm going to believe this. Okay. The male member of the family used to eat towards the end during the age of the Upanishads. Next up is again the most controversial thing in the Upanishads as well. There is also, largely, generally there was this, the caste system, or the Varna system rather. I keep making that mistake myself. Caste is not a native word or an organic word. So the Varna system, it's solidified, okay. The boundaries between the Varnas, they became more rigid, okay. Up until now, you will see, largely there were two types of marriages: the Anulom marriages and the Pratilom marriages, okay. We'll cover that in the next few minutes in this video. But yes, in the age of Upanishads, the Varna system became more rigid, more solid, and largely orthodox. On page number 513, R.C. Majumdar writes, it is clear that the position of the Vaishyas is deteriorating now and the caste distinctions are hardening. The Rashtra or nation consisted only of 3 castes, okay, the Shudras being excluded from it. Okay, now there are multiple ways to look at it. You can say that the nation existed, but there were only 3 layers of the society that were counted as the nationals of that nation. Okay, that the Bharat nation, that is the number 1, the priestly class, then the warrior class, and then the merchants and the traders and the artisans. Okay, now the people who belonged to the Sudra category, okay, the Upanishad says that they were excluded from belonging to the Rashtra. They were stripped of, their nationality simply because they belonged to the last Varna. Okay. Like I said, I'm not going to hold back simply because there are certain things that are horrible about our past. But that's okay. Okay? No country, no nation on the face of this earth has had a squeaky clean past. We have had some, skeletons. We have some skeletons in our closet. You might as well just open it and acknowledge and recognize it. Stop living under denial that some things were never done. Yes, they were done. Okay, if you don't do it anymore, that's a good thing. That's the sign of the first. That's the first sign of a progressive society. They are willing to be flexible and give up things. Okay, we made untouchability illegal. We made certain practices illegal. Okay, if indeed we were so rigid like the other monotheistic faiths who don't want a single change. Okay, they want their way of they want their faith to be similar to what was practiced during the early centuries, 4th, 5th, 6th centuries. Okay, but yeah, okay, so Griya Sutras, they mention a lot of status, occupations, obligations, duties, and privileges of the four principal varnas in matters both spiritual and secular. A different age is prescribed for each of the three higher castes for various sacraments. Okay, so one of the ceremonies is Upnayana, where that Janev is given to the male member of any family. So it is usually limited, according to Upanishads, it was usually limited to the initial three varnas. Yep, I know it sounds bitter. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but yes, it was done. Okay, the competition was so fierce. Okay, how do I make sense out of these things? Is simply they were just stages of your life. Okay, there are only four goals, ultimate goals that you can pursue in your life. Number one was you either become a priest. Number two was you either become a warrior. Number three was you either become a trader or a merchant. Okay, and there was cutthroat competition in all the three things. Okay, so these were largely vocations, but later on with trials and tribulations of history and with perversion of time, these things translated as something that was hereditary. But that is again a debate for some different video. Right now we are going to focus only on this chapter. It is written over here that the Brahmanas, they had become a well-organized priesthood. Among their special duties and privileges were the study of the Vedas and the teaching of the Vedas as well. Okay, so they had consolidated their power. Okay, the entire ancient history of Bharat is rather a power struggle between the priests and all the other three varnas. Okay, everybody was trying to subdue the Brahmanas and take their place. All right. Agriculture, cattle breeding, and commerce, they came into close contact with the Sudras. Okay, so it is largely said that the people in the Vaishya Varna, they were largely closer to the Shudra Varnas because since they were the traders, merchants, and the artisans, okay, they would have the need to employ other people who could work as their assistants or helpers. Okay, I know these things might sound a little bitter to hear some difficult truths, but it is what it is. We cannot keep this under the carpet simply because it will hurt some sentiments. Okay, and now I'm not sitting over here and justifying anything. I'm simply just trying to make sense of what existed 5,000 years ago. No country on the face of this earth has had a squeaky clean past. Okay, so we cannot expect Bharat to have a fail-safe civilization. Not fail-safe, that's an incorrect word. Like a mistakeless, without any mistake or without any blunder. Obviously, at the end of the day, we all are humans. Okay, Aryans may have reached the epitome of human development, but still, at the end of the day, they were still humans, and they were prone to errors. Okay. There is one very interesting description over here. If the Upanayan ceremony was neglected for the 3 generations in the family, the members become outcasts, whose very sight was inauspicious and who probably lived outside the village or town. Okay, but the Vratyastoma ceremony of expiation and penance would secure for the outcasts readmission into the Aryan fold. Alright, so here it is said And this gives me an impression that Aryanhood was something that was achieved. It could not be something that you were born with. Okay, since it is only the first three Varnas. Okay, the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, and the Vaishyas. It was only these three that were allowed to take Upnayana. So if you miss it for 3 generations, if you do not practice that tradition of taking the Upnayana after a certain age, okay, then so the person who has not taken that would be excommunicated from their caste, okay, from their varna, and they had to perform a rather elaborate sacrifice that goes by the name of Vratyastoma. Okay, this was a ceremony that you had to undertake for readmission back into the Aryan fold. Okay. The contact of the Aryan Varnas with the Shudras through intermarriage was bound to lead to the rise of mixed Varnas, and the difference of occupation must have resulted sooner or later in an increase in the number of such mixed castes. Like I said, okay, this methodology of classification of people into 4 Varnas, okay, it wasn't perfect, okay, and even though it might have been perfect in theory, but when in practice, okay, there was definitely some intermingling between people. All right, you might have also experienced this in your real life. We don't go out there people and ask people their caste. This is what I'm talking about, the contemporary world. Okay, although that might have been case in the ancient years, and I will go as far as to say that you wouldn't have to even ask them their caste. There will be some amulets on their hands or some sort of signal for them, something that they might be wearing, some type of clothes that they might be wearing that would reveal them their varna. Okay, but yes, in the contemporary world we don't go out there and ask people, okay, what is your caste, okay, now I can't touch you, now I can't have food with you, and so on and so on and so forth. Okay, we are way past that. So society has evolved out of that mindset. At least that is something that I like to think. Okay, because I have never asked any of my friends about their last name that they carry, and I'll change my behavior according to the last name that they carry. Okay. So yes, but what happened in real life was there was some intermingling between all the 4 Varnas, and once when there was intermingling, there were people, there were babies that were born out of those interminglings. Okay. Now what did this was, because this practice went on for centuries. It was not like that intermingling started and only a few years later it was banned. That's not how things work. Okay. So once when the intermingling started, there was no coming back. There were babies that were born out of those intermingling, and such actions or such practices gave rise to mixed Varnas. And that is why we have like a billion surnames in our country, like multiple last names. You go to any other state and you could never in a single lifetime at least know all the surnames that that state carries. Okay, so that is how things came about, and hence we have, I guess, irreversibly we have come far from the Varna system. But that does not mean that we do not learn the truth about it. Okay, simply hating something that existed thousands and thousands of years ago would be a bad thing. We can simply take whatever good that is there from the Varna system, and maybe we can modify it to suit modern needs. The Dharma Sutras give the names of the mixed castes that arose not only as a result of permitted Anuloma marriages but also as a result of prohibited Pratiloma marriages. Okay. Now there were 2 types of marriages, like I said. Okay. Anuloma is when the male belongs to a higher caste and the woman, she belongs to a lower caste. Okay. Pratiloma is type of a marriage where the woman belongs to a high caste and the male belongs to a lower caste. Okay. Now obviously the earlier one, the Anulom, was permitted, but Pratilom was not permitted. Okay. But regardless, this is a regular day-to-day experience. Okay. We people are the nationals of Bharat. Okay. We take rules or laws as a personal challenge. How can the state impose such a rule on me? Let me break that rule. Okay, so any given rule that you set in this part of the world is bound to be broken sooner or later. Okay, so although these things, they were not permitted, but they still existed. And now that these type of marriages existed, there were babies that were born out of those marriages, and then thus arose the confusion of a surname. Okay, there were people who were not accepted in the society, then there were other people who were practiced accepted in the society, and that gave rise to a lot of confusion. And fast forward it to the modern day or the current day, and hence we have a lot of surnames. The sacramental direction of the Griya Sutras raise an interesting problem in this connection by mentioning rarely, if ever, the mixed castes. Okay, the Griya Sutras and all the sutras in the Samhitas, they do not mention the mixed castes or the mixed varnas. The rules seem to be framed only for the Brahmana, Kshatriya and the Vaishya. These were the only three varnas for them. The rules were framed. Even the Sudras were not deemed fit enough for them to have rules. Okay. Yes, it was a very difficult time for them, I would say. Alright, interdining and intermarriage, obviously, like I said, okay, there might be some rule, as a general thumb rule, it might be there that you're not supposed to interdine or intermarry. There was no pratilom marriage that was recognized, but it still took place. You cannot, just because there was a rule, that does not mean that the practice is not prevalent. Okay. The formal theory of defilement. Now, earlier in the entirety of the Rig Vedas and the entirety of the Brahmanas and the Samhitas, we do not find this theory of defilement. Okay, what does the theory of defilement say? That if somebody from the higher Varna comes in contact with somebody from the lower Varna, okay, there will be some pollution in the Varna of the higher caste person. Okay, this was the theory of defilement that found consolidation during the age of the Upanishads. Okay, it took centuries and centuries of practice, and then finally in the age of the Upanishads there was this theory of defilement. You know why? Because, like I said, people were increasingly drifting away from the priestly class. They wanted to practice their faith on their own, so they started writing Griya Sutras, meaning instructions to carry out the sacrifice on your own at your house. Okay, and this was something that was not taken lightly by the higher varnas, and hence they came up with this theory of pollution of the caste or the pollution of the varna, resulting in the taboo of all contact on part of a pure man of the upper castes with an impure man, namely of the lowest caste. Okay. There was something interesting that I came across. You'll see many of the Hollywood celebrities as well, they are deciding to get married according to the mannerisms of the Aryan culture, that is our culture. Okay, why? Because it has been formally written down 5,000 years ago in our Upanishads. The way the current day marriages are practiced, the same way they were written down 5,000 years ago. Okay. Now I don't know how much woke you get. That has to mean something. A certain practice, okay, that was in play 5,000 years ago to this very day in December 2024, if it still exists, okay, it must mean something. Alright, and hence you see increasing number of people. Now it's a rather an ironic situation, because people in our country, they are rather thinking about going for destination weddings and trying to get married in a Catholic manner and whatnot. And on the other hand, you have people from the West, they come over here to get married according to the Aryan rituals. So it's interesting to see. Yes, so there are total 11 steps that are exactly written down in the Griya Sutras, right from the very beginning of the wooers formally go to the girl's house. Okay, now there are people, even I myself was amongst them, who had this question, why does exactly how to the groom has to go to the bride's house? Okay, but it has been like this since 5000 years. So who are we to ask these questions? Are we smarter than the collective wisdom of our ancient, of our Aryan forefathers? Definitely not. Okay, so there are total 11 steps. Okay, the last one being the Saptapadi, meaning the couple walking 7 steps together as a symbolic of their lifelong concord. Okay, that is the last step, and all these steps, there are 11 steps that you need to undertake to get married to another person, and this is written down in the Griya Sutras. And so this should mean something. That is the point that I am making. The elements, okay, now let's talk about some bad elements as well. These things also existed. I'm not saying that, like I said, I'm not going to include only the good things about our culture. There are things that are bad about our culture as well, and let's see. But we have got rid of them. Okay, this is only for educational purposes. The elements of bride price are discernible in the asura form of marriage, where the father of the bride is gladdened with the money. Okay, so there are close to, I don't exactly remember, but 6 type of marriages. One type of marriage from that is the asura marriage, meaning simply the father of the bride will sell his daughter in return for some money. Yes, this practice was there. Okay, and there are hints of a dowry in the Brahma and Deva forms of marriage, where the father gives away the daughter after decking her with ornaments. Okay, this is a practice. Although we have, made it illegal to accept and give dowry both. Okay, but yes, if people want to willingly practice it, it's not about the will. Rather, there are many videos on social media and even on Instagram as well, where certain dowry videos or reels, where we have those videos of people counting money. Okay, so it's a practice, it's a tradition. Okay, if you have a problem with it, I would suggest you look at the traditions of all the other ancient civilization. None of them exist, by the way. Okay, so why not grant some empathy to these practices? The Dharma Sutras treat of the widow's right in the property of husband. The possibility of general prevalence of sati is ruled out. Okay, now this is one very interesting thing. If you R.C. Majumdar, page number 518, writes that in the Dharma Sutras and the Dharma Sutra scriptures, there are descriptions of widow's right in the property of her husband. So weren't we taught in our school that sati is the a very ancient practice in our culture, and that is how women are treated? Then why Dharma Sutras are talking about the widow's right in the property of her husband? Wasn't she going to die on the deathbed? Why talk about her inheritance or inherital rights? Okay, so it's wrong to say that sati as a practice was prevalent since ancient times. Okay, there is no description of sati in the Rig Veda, as far as in this book R.C. Majumdar has made no mention, in the Brahmanas or in the Samhitas. Okay, in the Upanishads as well. Okay, so and Upanishads are supposed to be the culmination of the entire Rig Vedic and the Aryan thought. Alright, so sati, I would say, is largely, I'm not denying that it is not an inhuman practice. Obviously, it is an inhuman practice. That is not the point that I'm making. Okay, the point that I'm making over here is sati was used as an excuse, okay, to make us feel bad about our culture by making us think that such practice are inherent in our civilization, and hence the patriarchal society of Bharat is very bad. Okay, that is not the logic. Okay, now at the same time, I will repeat, I am not justifying or condoning the practices of sati. All I am saying is the way it was used, okay, to trick us into thinking that our civilization is inherently, partial towards women. That is wrong. Now there are also theories about why would what were some justifications given for polygamy. Okay, as far as this book is concerned, R.C. Majumdar on page number 518 and 519, he writes that a husband was allowed to take multiple wives only under few conditions, and one of the conditions was if the wife that he is married to is not able to birth sons. Okay, so in those conditions you are allowed to take multiple wives. Okay, Apastambha is one of the another scriptures during the Upanishads imposes severe penalties on a husband who unjustly forsakes his wife. Okay, so there are even serious penalties for the husband if he forsakes his wife. All right, so it's there. Okay, it's all of this, even the uncomfortable truths and the things that were used or the things that were manipulated to trick us into thinking that our civilization is inherently bad towards women, inherently partial and biased towards women. That is not the case. Okay, and the last part, okay, in this chapter on page, not exactly this chapter but in this section and this chapter, is that the father protects them in their child. This is the women, about women that they are talking about. Okay, this is there in the Bodhyana Dharma Shastra, that the father protects them in childhood, their husbands protect them in their youth, their sons protect them in their age. A woman is never fit for independence. Okay, yes, it is written and it is rather uncomfortable to read, but yes, so this was practiced. Now, when I say they are not fit for independence, does that mean that we keep our women chained in our houses? Is that so? No. Okay, if you observe, the next time you go to a marriage function, observe how many rights are granted to a woman in that marriage function. Okay, and even in your day-to-day life activities, you can observe these things. So when the Dharma Sutras say that the woman is never fit for independence, that does not mean that they weren't exactly enjoying any degree of freedom. Okay, here they are talking largely from the security perspective, because they were the ones who were they were the ones who hold power to birth your progeny, and hence they were supposed to be protected. Okay, they were the ones who were supposed to guide you spiritually, and hence they were protected. Okay, so when the Dharma Sutras say that a woman is never fit for independence, don't take it into as a literal meaning. Okay, all right, that's it for this episode in the ancient history of Bharat. I will see you guys in the next episode. Thank you for watching.